Okay, we are live. Are you ready to get absolutely nuts, Anthony?
Let's get crazy. Let's get wild.
Let's do it. On today's episode of Playing Small is Canceled, we have a very exclusive treat. He's a best-selling author, a business coach, and the host of the Amplified Impact podcast, Big Facts. Starting from 80,000 in debt and living in a van, he transformed his life by mastering his ADHD and creating a system to harness his focus, which I deeply admire. His journey from struggling with distractions and self-sabotage to building dynamic, multiple seven-figure businesses, as well as growing 2 8-figure companies and managing an 85 million real estate portfolio is nothing short of off the charts. Now, he's on a mission to help entrepreneurs, creatives, and high performers maximize their potential and build better businesses. Please welcome the resilient, focused, and multifaceted, but brilliant and handsome Anthony Vicino. How you doing, Anthony?
Brother, I'm feeling good right now. That's the first time anybody's called me handsome today. So honestly, it's like it's almost 1 o'clock in the afternoon and nobody's called me handsome. So I'm kind of, I was feeling a little bit left out there.
I call it like I see it, brother.
I appreciate that. Yeah, dude, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good today. We were just talking about this beforehand. It's winter, it's cold, but it's sunshine. It's beautiful. It's blue skies. So you just gotta love that.
A lot to be grateful for, not just because it's Thanksgiving, but I love your perspective. I got to tell you, we were chatting a little bit before we hopped on today, and I've been following your work for some time. What a treat to share you with our communities, our audience. We're going to repurpose on multiple platforms. I'm so pumped. For anyone in our audience that might not have been familiar, do a deep dive, play catch up. We're just going to have an unbelievable conversation. Before we dive into it, I have a little icebreaker for you. Are you ready for me?
Yeah, let's do it.
How important is it for you to be connected to your mission?
Well, it's everything in the sense. So like what attracted me to this show, like when you first reached out and was like, hey, you want to come on the show? Playing Small is Canceled. The title of that podcast really resonated with me because when what did this have been? I was probably like 31, 32 years old. And things had started to go well for me in my own life. My businesses had started to turn around. I was no longer living in the back of a van. And I had reached like that first level of success where you can now take care of yourself. You now have your own needs kind of handled, right? And what ended up happening is like I went into this period of time where I was kind of listless, where I didn't really know what to do next. And because the idea of just like being more successful for the sake of my own success, like it wasn't really attractive, like just going and making more money for the sake of more money didn't hold any appeal. And so I went through this period where I kind of just plateaued and started to get a little depressed. And one day I was talking to my mentor and he goes, dude, you do the world no favors by playing small. And there was something in that I realized. I was like, oh, you're right. Like I have this potential, I have something, I have more to give the world. And I don't know, like, if that means impacting the world on a global scale, or if that's just impacting my neighborhood or my community or whatever it is. But I realized, like, okay, it has to be about more than just me at this point, because I've already solved that problem. So now what's the point of the rest of this, right? What's the point of getting out of the bed in the morning when you've already you've ostensibly won the game? Now it's like, if you can't motivate yourself for some higher purpose, some higher mission, you're going to have a really hard time. You're going to get into that depressive funk. Or listen, hell, like when I was in the back of the van, dead broke, I also had a big why, right? My mission was, I don't want to be a wart on the backside of the world. I didn't want to be useless. I didn't want people to have to help me. I wanted to be able to help myself. Right. And so at every single point, if you can't connect it to your why, to your mission, like what's the point of it all? And it has to be more than just, I want to make money so I can get rich and famous. Right. Because that's like a pretty shallow, and you realize pretty quickly as you start to move towards that goal, it doesn't fill the hole that you have inside of you that you were looking to fill in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful. So there's that. And you and I have a little bit of a similar background, not the same, but I know exactly what you're talking about when you start to be able to get to a position where yourself is taken care of. And just to be clear, we should be unapologetic about the milestones in the physical experience and on that journey. But as you just attested to, none of those things will ever create lasting fulfillment, just injections. Yeah. But connecting to something a little bit bigger, identifying our gifts and sharing them, and unapologetically making money doing so, that's connecting to something a little bit bigger. That's actually something that will last in regards to fulfillment.
100%. Yeah. And I'm 100% on board with the idea. You know, a lot of people, the reason that they struggle in the money games, the reason that they struggle in life is because as you think about, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you have to meet your basic needs first, your shelter, your security, and all that stuff before you can move up the ladder and start worrying about, you know, self-actualization and working on your relationships and the impact that you have on the world at large. So first thing we all have to solve is like, okay, I gotta put food on the table. I gotta put a roof over my head. I gotta take care of my family, right? And those are money problems. And the problem for most people is most people get stuck never solving the money problems. They don't know how to because nobody talks about it, because there's like this taboo around talking about money, whereas we also idolize people who have money. So we simultaneously put people who have money on a pedestal and say, oh, look how great that must be. But then we don't talk about it. And so people just struggle in silence, and they feel weird talking about it, and they feel weird setting their goal as having like the desire to want money. Because they're like, oh, you know, the money is the root of all evil, or the desire for money is the root of all evil. And it's like, no, it's actually quite a good thing, because, you know, money doesn't solve all your problems, but it solves all your money problems. And once you solve those, now you can start worrying about solving bigger, more interesting problems in the world at large.
Beautiful perspective. This is great. I want to make the most of every second, so I'm going to hit you with a couple of the really cool that you talk about that I think will be very valuable today. And we'll get a little practical too, in addition to the spiritual. One of the things that you talk about are the 3 core millionaire skills. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, they're focus, learning, and discipline. Also important and so beautiful. How did you come up with those 3, and why are those 3 so important for you?
So focus is the big one for me, in that, you know, I have ADHD, and that was the real sticking point for a lot of my life, because I didn't have the systems or the routines that would allow me to harness that chaotic energy and point it in the direction of my goals. And so I spent a lot of my 20s just kind of dispersing my energy in all different directions. And it wasn't until I learned to harness that, to constrain my focus, right? Because one of the things with people who have ADHD is like, we don't want to be constrained. We don't want to have systems or routines or structure. We rebel against that. And yet the diffused light cannot pierce unless it is focused, right? And so we can bring heat and we can set things on fire once we bring our focus, our energies into focus. And that requires a constraint. And so learning how to do that was paramount, right? Because I believe, you know, a lot of people say time is your most valuable asset. I don't believe that, because time is this ephemeral construct that's subjective in nature. There's no objective measure of time, right? Like how you perceive time, how I perceive it, it's completely different. And in the moment, like if I'm having a deep, meaningful conversation like this, it moves at a different speed than if I'm doing something really laborious and horrible and I'm just like, this is taking forever, right? So time is this ephemeral thing. The more core unit, though, that we run on, it's not time, it's our energy, it's our focus, it's where we put our energy and our focus that dictates what we get out of our life. And so I use that as the fundamental building block upon which everything else is built. Learning is the second skill that I think about when it comes to like, if you want to be successful in life, because learning is like the master skill. It's what makes humans humans. It's our ability to do a thing, to fail, to learn, to iterate, and to do it better next time. And there's nothing in this world that you can't learn how to do. And once you learn how to learn, then pretty much everything unlocks. And it's this wild thing. Like I used to think I was really bad at math, but it was just that I didn't know how to learn math. And once I learned how to learn math, I became very good at math. It's the same with any skill set. Just knowing that like, if it's a skill that somebody has, it can be learned. And you have that ability as being a human. It's super cool. The third one is discipline, because there's a battle that goes on for each of us. I consider there's 2 selves. You have the biological you and you have the modern you. The biological you is the one that's evolved over, you know, thousands of years, and its only goal was to keep you alive long enough to propagate your genes. And it wanted to do that while reducing your caloric expenditure, right? So its goal is to keep you alive, keep you safe long enough to pass on your genes. Well, the problem is that for us nowadays, as the modern self, we have all of our existential problems more or less solved. We're not sitting around worrying about getting eaten by a tiger on the street. So now we have more time and energy to work on the things that are about more than just surviving. It's about thriving. But there's this battle that's waged every single day between that biological you, which just wants to keep you checked out on the couch watching Netflix and eating Cheetos, and the modern you, which recognizes that all the things that you want in life, all those big audacious goals that you have, things that fill you with meaning and purpose and progress, they're on the other side of doing difficult things. And so the biological you wants to keep you here, and the modern you wants to move forward. And the thing that bridges the gap between those two things is the discipline. Right? Most people will sit and they'll wait for motivation to strike to be more motivated than their biological self would want them otherwise to be. And the problem is it's fleeting. They might be motivated for a moment, but then it's gone and they're right back on the couch. And without discipline to bridge the gap, you can never give the keys over to the modern self and actually make progress towards your goals. So you have to have discipline.
I find it so fascinating that two of my superpowers, and I can see that they are yours as well, consistency and discipline, are accessible to everybody. Those are things anybody could develop if they wanted to, yet so many struggle with those two.
100%. It's, all the most valuable skills in the world are freely available to all of us, right? Like everything that we just listed here: focus, learning, discipline, consistency, actually showing up and doing what you say. We have a very simple value structure at my companies, which is we show up and we do what we say. It's like, if you just show up and do what you say every single day, consistently, keep your word with integrity, like you can get pretty darn far in life. But the problem is that consistency is hard. It's maybe like the simplest thing, like conceptually, but practically speaking, for most people, it's like the hardest thing to actually follow through and execute.
Yeah, sometimes the simplest things to do are also the simplest not to do. And
Totally.
then also, hell yeah. And I saw you, and I want to encourage everybody to listen to your content. It's unbelievable. You're talking about procrastination, something that you struggle with forever. And I actually had a breakthrough when I heard you say this, because for the things that are important to me, brother, you can't stop me. I'm all over it, almost to a curse. And the things that I'm not really excited about, I find ways to procrastinate. And I never consider myself a procrastinator because of all the other things that I achieve. I'm all over. But it occurred to me that I do procrastinate with things that I'm not super excited about. I thought that was so groundbreaking, the way that you described that, and it made me realize that I'm a bit of a procrastinator too. The key is to find things that I'm genuinely passionate and connected to, and there's no room for procrastination with those.
100%. I think a lot of times, there's a question I love to ask myself, which is, what's my outcome? So when I started on this personal development journey, this is 12 years ago at this point, I knew that my default mode was for my ADHD just to kind of run roughshod over my life. And I would just kind of bop around from thing to thing throughout the day with no real sense of direction or purpose. And as I started to create constraints and say, okay, this is the goal at which I'm targeting my energies, this is what I'm going to try and do with my life, I started to find that despite my best efforts, I would make good progress in these spurts, but then I would get distracted. I would get pulled into these other things, or I would lose the intention that I initially had brought to the activity. For instance, it's very easy, we're on a call like this, and it's very easy to start with the intention of, okay, I'm going to be here, I'm going to be focused, I'm going to try and deliver value to the audience, and I'm going to try and share my journey in a way that can connect with them. Well, it's very easy after 15, 20 minutes of talking to lose sight of that intention. And you can go into this lull where it's like, okay, now I'm just going through the motions. And you probably had this in meetings, right? Where you're in a one-on-one meeting or in a team meeting, and you're just kind of going through the motions. And so what I did, knowing that my default state was to try and slip back into this kind of unintentional state, was to program this alarm to go off on my phone 4 times every day, just randomly. And when it would go off, it would be accompanied with the question, what's my outcome? And it would be this interesting pattern interrupt. And, if it went off right now, if my phone just went off right now and it said, what's my outcome? It would give me this moment to pause and reflect and say, why am I here? What is my goal in doing this? And when it comes to procrastination, I think a lot of times the reason we procrastinate is because we don't have it clearly defined in our minds. What's the outcome? Why is it so important that I do that thing right now and not keep pushing it off? And a lot of times it's, we procrastinate the things that over a long enough time frame will have these massive benefits, but in the short term, it's really hard to measure the worthwhileness of that activity. Like going to the gym isn't, on any given day, it's not going to make or break your overall physical fitness, right? But over the course of like 5 years, showing up consistently every single day, that's a big impact. But in the moment, it's really easy to procrastinate because we can lose sight of what's the big outcome, which is I want to be healthy. I want to be fit. I want to be strong. And I don't want that just for today, but I want that for when I'm 82 years old, right? And so connecting where you are right now to that big vision for your life, which goes back to what you mentioned before, like what's your mission? How do you connect this back to the grand mission you have for your life?
Yeah. Beautiful, brother. I love that. Alarm 4 times a day to kind of bring you back to the present. Why am I doing this? What is the desired outcome here? And then refocus.
Yep.
Yeah.
Super tactical, super powerful.
Yeah. Of all the things that you have going on right now, which are a lot, what are you personally most excited about right now?
You know, I love the content game. I love taking my thoughts and trying to distill them and then share them. And not just for like people, maybe entrepreneurs or people with ADHD who maybe can benefit from that. But one of the things that's really gets me jazzed is to look back at content that we've created in previous years or at previous phases of the journey, and to see how thoughts and see how philosophies evolve over time. And so I'm a big proponent for entrepreneurs and people that are trying to like move to that next level in life to start creating content, not just because of the downstream business impact that it can have for you, but because it helps you become better in touch with who you are and what you think on really important topics. And I've been loving that over the last couple of years. It's been a lot of fun.
What's your favorite platform?
Well, I love YouTube. We put a lot of time and energy into the videos that we do there, but my favorite is just writing. I love writing. And so Twitter and LinkedIn are two more like text-based platforms. I like that a lot. Instagram is okay, but Instagram is like so short that you can't go deep on something. And in my experience, if you really want to impact somebody's life, you have to go a little bit deeper. And YouTube is great for that.
Yeah, beautiful. I love it. This is great. A couple more things before we land the plane. One of the things that you talk about is the failure scoreboard.
Yeah.
I like that sound of that as a nice ring to it. I think that's a good paradigm shift. Can you unpack that?
Yeah. I think of success as the iterative process of failing less and less over time. Right. And so if we then measure what is the input that leads to the desired output of success, the input is failure, trying, failing, learning, iterating, trying again. And so if we can increase our rate of failure, of iterative failure, not just in the same failure over and over, but increase the rate of iterative failure, we can get to success more quickly. And that's really helpful in a world where if you're moving towards really big, hairy, audacious goals, it takes a long time to get the W, to see the win. And so a lot of people will get discouraged and they'll stop being consistent. They'll stop showing up. And so the failure scoreboard is simply a way of saying, okay, instead of measuring whether or not this was a good day, week, or month based off of how many games I won, I'm actually going to measure it based off of how many failures I incurred, knowing that it's the iterative rate of failure which leads to success. And so if we're failing quick and we're failing fast, then we can say, hey, I'm trying, I'm moving, I'm doing things. The worst thing is the people who, they only, and they sit there, they're trying to get like overly prepared and get it just perfect, just get it dialed, and they just make that one shot on goal. I'm much rather shoot 100 times in that same period and just keep going through the reps, try to learn as quickly as I can. And so the failure scoreboard, what I like to do is on Sundays is I like to look back at my week and reflect and say, okay, on each given day, what was the big failure? What did we try that didn't work, that I thought was going to do this, but it didn't quite work in the way we thought? And then reflect on that, right? Because our failures are way better teachers than our successes ever will be. So we can take those and ask ourselves, what went wrong? Why didn't it go to plan? Right? And then we can iterate in the next week. And so I just love the idea of the failure scoreboard, because now when we fail, it's actually a win. So it's like flipping that script, and we've just created a new way for us to win the game.
It's almost like you're asking a client or a student, like, how many times did you fail today? And they're like, oh, none. I'm like, you missed it. Yeah, you're missing the whole point. Failure to me is trying. Yeah. Now, being a failure, that's finite. That's a little bit different if you just stop and you're out of the game. But failing is bringing you closer, and your ability to not take it personal and extract the lesson makes you better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Steve Jobs, he used to say this in context of saying no, right? He would go to his people and he'd say, "What have you said no to recently?" Because he's like, the no's are the way of saying yes to our goals, right? And actually being clear and saying that is the thing that's truly important to me. By saying no to this, I am prioritizing that thing. And when he was asking that question, he's like, I'm not just asking you to tell me like, oh, I said no to this thing. That thing was an easy thing to say no to. I want you to tell me, what did you say no to this week that you wanted so badly to run towards, that you actually think is a great idea? Like, tell me those things that you said no to show me how bought in you are to the actual goal. And it's the same thing with failures. Like, just asking that one question: what have you failed at recently? What have you said no to recently? I love that frame.
I think there's something so powerful about saying no, because if you're saying no to things that are beneath your standards that you have for yourself, then you're available for the right, bigger, stronger thing to come in. But you have to be brave, right? I feel like this is how you tap into certainty consciousness, which is a different conversation, but build a strong connection with whatever it is you believe in by being able to say no to something that's below your standards, even though you can't see the next best thing around the corner, but having certainty that if you do say no, you'll have the space to draw that in.
100%. This is very similar to a concept I think a lot about, which is focus is an act of courage. Focus, if you think about this, for our ancestors out on the savannah, if they were to sit and focus on trying to make a fire, what does that mean? It means that they're blocking out everything that's happening around them. And it opens up to potentially being sneaked up on by an animal predator, right? And so focusing cuts out what's happening around us, and it makes you vulnerable to other things that could be happening to you. And focus then is the ability to say no to these other paths, to these other options, which we know as humans, like, we love having options. We love that, right? Like, the word, what's the root word of decision? It's like decidere in Latin, which just means to cut off. To make a decision is to cut off other options. To focus on that decision, to follow through with it, is an act of courage, because who knows what else could have been out there. But it doesn't matter. This is the battle you've chosen to fight, so fight it with everything that you have.
Yeah, I love it. So good, brother. Before we land the plane, I wanted to ask you this final one. In regards to money-making millionaire skills, which you talk a lot about, being a little bit practical, some of the ones that you're really big on are communication, finance and investing, and leverage. I think that's really beautiful and helpful for anybody, that it's not just enough to make money, but what do you do with it? Why are those three so important for you?
Well, communication is like the master skill. The reason that we're here right now, that we are where we are in life, Craig, is largely due to our ability to communicate an idea we have in our head to a customer, to our employees, to different partners. So it's the ability to communicate the ideas, the thoughts that you have in a compelling way that moves people to move in alignment with your goals. That's the superpower. This is why Steve Jobs said the storyteller is the most powerful person in the world. Right. And that's all based around the ability to communicate, whether that's one-to-one or one-to-many. Finances, I mean, if you want to learn how to make money, if you want to make money, you want to be a millionaire, you have to learn to speak the language of money. That is finance. And a lot of people just have never dove into, they don't even understand what money is. Right. And so you have to be able to speak that side. Leverage is understanding that it's very hard to build meaningful wealth by just exchanging your direct inputs in exchange for money. So you putting in the work, you doing XYZ and getting XYZ out as a result. So moving with leverage, which is, you get more out per unit that you put in, and figuring out how can I get more and more leverage for the work that I'm doing. That's how you build true wealth. And so if you can understand those three concepts, like how to communicate an idea, how to speak the language of money, and then how to use leverage, you can move mountains.
And all these are skill sets that can be developed.
100%. 100%. Yeah. I encourage everybody, regardless, like whenever you are met with an idea, a belief, anything, ask yourself, what is the skillful manifestation of that? Right? Like optimism. One of the crazy things that I found, like hanging around really successful people, and this would have been surprising to me when I was younger, is that overall, like 99% of successful people are super optimistic and positive. I wouldn't have expected that. And I'm by my nature, I used to be very pessimistic. Now, you might look at that and say that's an innate belief or skill or trait, right? Like Anthony is just a pessimistic person. But it wasn't until I started looking at pessimism and optimism as a skill to be developed. I was like, oh, how can I develop this skill of optimism, right? Or the skill of faith, the skill of courage, right? These concepts, and you can break those down into actions that you can take on the day-to-day that make you more courageous, more faithful, or, you know, more optimistic. And so I love breaking everything down into skills and learning.
Same. It's a muscle that could be flexed, and if you're willing to break it down, people get so dejected because they're going to A to Z. But you go to A to B, and then take those goals and measure them by certain tasks that you can take. You begin to expand your vessel on what's possible.
Yeah. I just go back to, like, you know, we talked about learning earlier. Like the example I think about most often is, you know, a baby deer is born, and within just like a couple minutes, it's up and running around doing what baby deer do. It's like it can do everything that a deer does at that point, right? But a baby human is useless, like for the first, I don't know, like I was pretty useless for like the first 20-ish years of my life, right? But the great gift of being human is that you can learn, you can develop, you can improve. And like that is the ultimate gift of being alive and being human and being able to consume this, is recognizing, like, wherever you're at right now, wherever you want to go, the thing that's separating you from that place is you becoming the type of person who has the skills and the abilities, the beliefs to be in that place. And you can acquire all of that. It might not be as fast as you want, might not be as easy as you would like it to be, but it's entirely up to you and your ability to go and acquire the skills.
Beautiful, brother. Perfect way to land the plane. For our community that wants to go deeper, or whatever the case may be, what's the best way for them to support, stay involved, and keep up with what you're up to?
Yeah, I mean, come find me on LinkedIn. We do a lot over there. Anthony Vicino. You can find me on YouTube. We're on all the platforms. But I would love to connect with the audience and understand, like, what are you struggling with? So find me on any of those platforms. Shoot me a DM and let me know, like, what is the biggest obstacle in your life right now? I'm super curious, because that's how we make content. We talk to the audience and say, what are you struggling with? Okay, cool. Let's talk about that.
Beautiful. Brother, hang up for 1 second. I want to connect you after. Thank you so much for stopping by today, Anthony, and dropping these priceless, juicy nuggets.
Thanks, brother.